All right, we've got YouTube going. Perfect. And we've got a recording going. It's like all these boxes that I have to mentally check when we get ready to go and get started. Okay, I think we are good to go. So seeing the slides on my end looks good. Hearing me looks good. So perfect. Okay, well, welcome to our lesson tonight, Thursday, January 4th, lesson 21. And we are continuing our work at the end of Unit 4. If we don't finish up Unit 4 tonight, we are going to be awfully close to getting done. So, my main announcement this evening is that there is a special Coaches Corner session, the first Coaches Corner session of the new year, which will be on the 7th, this Sunday. Coaches Corner are always held at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. But this particular session is with our course director, Jen Morantz, and she will be covering the new uh, course outline, percentages, changes that were announced right around the time of the holidays that are for those of you that are taking HRCI exams, so PHR and SPHR exams. So here's really just one additional thing that I want to mention about this that a test taker and I were talking on Tuesday that you really have to keep in mind that will really direct your attention. I mean, number one, it'll be recorded, the session. So if you don't attend it live, then of course. But your date to take your test, your last date. So this is really especially if you don't have your test scheduled already, all right, is May 1st of 2024. So this goes into effect March 1st. So up until now, and as we go into Unit 5, we are going to be looking at the test content percentages as they will be through essentially the end of February 28th. So as we finish our course, if you are going to take your test, and maybe you haven't scheduled it yet, but maybe you've applied for your test, been approved for your test, and it's just a matter of you scheduling your test, then you should really take a look at what that looks like if you intend to take your test by February 28th and how that relates to your study plan. Okay. Because if you don't intend to take your test by February 28th and these new changes go into effect on March 1st, then if you're going to fall into this space between March 1st and essentially it would be it would be May 1st because that's technically the deadline date, then you will be taking a test that has a different outline content than the test that we have been working on as it relates to the percentage content. Okay. The content itself is not different. So I don't want you to like panic and be like, oh my gosh, this is a completely different test. No, not at all. If you go back and you look at the email that Jen sent out, it's not about that. So you don't need to be panicked in any way, shape, or form. But it's the percentages that we have been working on that are different, especially for, I would say, when I looked at the content changes, one of the biggest areas I noticed, and I don't have it pulled up and I'm happy to look at it after class, was SPHR, where the SPHR has a big change in Unit 3 in learning and development. They've taken a chunk off of Unit 1, which we haven't looked at it as a group yet of instructors. I'm really interested to hear from Jen's opinion why she thinks that that is, but they've taken a big percentage off of Unit 1 and slapped it onto Unit 3. I find that very interesting. I can only think that it is because Unit 3 contains change management. And a big part of what senior test takers do from a day to day is change. We do a lot of change management, we do a lot of organizational change. And so that's, I think, the reason why, day to day from a training perspective, yeah, really not so much. But change is the last, two sections in that section, that unit rather. So I think you do need to pay attention to that because that is going to affect how you prepare for the exam. Does that make sense to everybody? As far as what your focus is and the time that you need to take if you're not going to take the test before February 28th. If you haven't, registered for your test and you haven't scheduled your test, then you probably were anticipating, especially if you were expecting to take your test before the money back guarantee period was up, you were likely probably going to take your test during March or April, I would imagine, sitting in your shoes. So
Deja, oye, Zambarno.
I think we've got some voice on the background. So let me go ahead and mute everybody. Okay, so let's dig in again tonight. We're going to push through as much as we can, finishing up Unit 4. Whatever we don't get to, we will tack on to the beginning of Tuesday's class. Tuesday, we'll take our vote for the Unit 4 mini review, but we're going to be jumping headfirst into Unit 5 for all of next week. And I will tell you that excitedly, I had 2 more people pass their SPHR just in the last couple of days this week. Both of the people that passed the SPHR said that their test, I could tell that they had the same test. And I know that because they both said the same thing, which was their test had a lot of union questions in it. And so unions is coming up at the beginning of Unit 5. There's about, I think, 7 sections on unions. So that's what we will be getting into. The first 4 sections of Unit 5 that we're going to cover at the very beginning are employee engagement based, and then we're going to jump into employee relations, labor relations, which is about unions. All right, so with that all being said, if you want to talk anything else about the exam changes after class today, I'm happy to have that discussion. Otherwise, that Coach's Corner Sunday at 8 p.m. will be recorded if you can't attend live, but I would definitely encourage you to be there if you can to hear from Jen directly. All right, from class, we left off on healthcare benefits. We talked about the 5 healthcare options that had to do with HMO, PPO, etc. So, where we are finishing up the section, it's kind of divided into 2 parts. Tonight is on the first one is about flexible benefit plans. So, this is under the section that's called Consumer Directed Healthcare, and it starts on page 158. So let's talk about, first of all, that first bulleted point under flexible benefit plans is the term called flexible benefits. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about cafeteria benefits. Taking a couple of drinks here. Give me just a second. My cold is loving to hang on. I'll tell you that. Now my daughter, of course, I figured she would end up getting it, and now so she is sick. Okay, so flexible benefits is simply a term that means that we are giving our employees choices, and it's in the way that we give them choices that determines how we do that. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. In general, when we use the term flexible benefits in the eyes of people who are in a benefits position and working with benefits, it also is called as a synonym term cafeteria style benefits. And this is under the guise of what we call an IRS area of what we call Section 125 term, 125 law. The law comes from the IRS guidelines under the Section 125 tax law. And it's called Section 125 because of the guidelines under the Section 125 tax code. Under the Section 125 tax code, which is talked about on page 159, what this allows an employer to do is to provide benefits to their employees and provide these benefits in such a way that it gives employees choices of what benefits they want to have and how they want to mix and match these benefits and who they want to have in what benefit choices, which you'll see tiered benefit plans at the bottom of page 158. And in whatever benefit choices they choose, it allows them to take these choices pre-tax out of their gross wages. So essentially, what this means is that we have gross wages. So let's say that an employee, we'll just use an exempt employee to make it an easier computation, that their gross wages per earnings period is $1,000. Okay. And so, of all of their benefit selections, medical, dental, vision, they choose medical for themselves and their spouse. And that costs $100. They choose dental for themselves and their family, and that costs $50. They choose vision for the employee plus their children, and that costs another $50. So the total of their benefits is now $200. That's an amount that will then be deducted from their gross wages, leaving an amount of $800 that is then taxed. Now, this doesn't take into account the fact that they may also have 401k. They may also have some other benefits that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But the point of a Section 125 plan is that it allows these benefits to be deducted before taxes are taken, therefore providing a break to the employee in the form of taxes. Okay. These plans are designed so that they have very specific restrictions on who can get into the plans, who can get out of the plans, and when enrollment and changes can take place. Was someone going to say something? Okay, I thought I heard a question. So who is familiar with benefit plans and knows what these restrictions are? Does anybody have the experience to identify what these restrictions are? Can anybody tell me under a Section 125 plan what the guidelines are under the law? Anybody have that knowledge? I'm sure there are some of you that do benefits. What are some of the ways that you can get? There's four main ways that you can get in to flexible benefit plans. Get in or get out or make changes.
The open enrollment which is usually once a year, is one of them, right?
Yep. Open enrollment. I'm just going to say OE. Yep, for sure.
When you start a job, usually it's within 30 or 60 days, or the first availability that you can apply.
Yep. So when you begin employment, so whatever that term is, 30 days, first of the, day one, whatever that designated time is.
And
yep. Someone
is another one.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's called the initial enrollment period.
Right. So I think that's what was just mentioned when you begin employment, your initial enrollment. That's right. And then someone else also messaged me and said a life event. So
Right.
That is the third one. So when you have people call it different things. I usually call it a change in family status. So this could be you get married, you get divorced, you have a child, and this under the Section 125 requires documentation. So it's within 30 days and it requires documentation. So a birth certificate, a marriage license, a divorce paper, whatever that documentation is that supports that event. Now, not in this, I don't think would be in on the test, maybe for a senior. I don't want to say for sure. This is kind of a weeds based question. But if this would be a scenario, so an employee presents a change in family status to add their spouse because they got married. So they want to add a spouse. And they attempt at the same time to make a change that's not related to adding their spouse. Are they allowed to do it? And the answer would be no. That's right. Somebody messaged me. No, unless it has to do with adding that spouse. So they can add the spouse onto medical, dental, vision, anything that has to do with that spouse. Yes. But if it has to do with a child, no, because the event that's taking place doesn't have to do with the child unless it's the child of the spouse, right? If it's stepchildren and you're adding stepchildren onto the plan, then yes. But if it was the employee's own child, then no. So you would have to read very carefully in that question to make sure that you understand exactly what the question is asking, so that you're very clear about what the situation is that you're being provided with, so that you're very clear on what you're being asked. Because the laws under which the Section 125 are based on, they are based on the IRS guidelines, and then they are also based on ERISA, which is another law that we will look at under benefit law. So that's the basis of Section 125. Those are the three main things. We don't have to get into the rest of the weeds of Section 125. Those are the three main things that you would see related to Section 125 plans. Okay, so open enrollment, beginning employment, or beginning of your ability to enroll, or a change in family status, or a life event is sometimes what they're also called. Any questions about that one? So those are related to flexible benefit plans, tiered coverage, cafeteria benefits, kind of all the same idea. All right. The next one on page 159, I'm going to erase this just so that we have some more room. The next one is FSAs. So FSAs actually have two different types of plans. One is for medical, and the other is for child care or dependent care, you might see it called. And so these types of plans are also tax deferred. Okay, so they also enjoy the plan status of being taken before taxes come out, so out of gross wages. The reason that flexible spending arrangements or flexible spending accounts are so beneficial to the employee is because of that tax preferential status. So employees can choose the medical plan. They can defer these amounts. And I think I don't know, does anybody know what the 2024 amount is? Anybody know? I haven't looked it up for 2024 yet, actually. I think it was 27 last year. I think it was, but I don't know what it is for 2024 yet. Regardless, this is an amount of money that an employee would be allowed to, you may see in the grocery store, like you'll see an FSA tag on an item like Band-Aids or cough syrup or Tylenol, where over-the-counter items are FSA items that you can purchase. People also use FSA dollars for deductibles, co-payments. So FSAs have a lot of different uses that people can use them for. FSAs are great. One of the best uses that people can use FSAs for, that I used to tell employees to use them for, is for dental. So let's say that you have dental procedures, and a lot of times in dental plans, you may have only 50% coverage on major dental services, right? If you have to have a root canal done or major dental work done, where you have a deductible and it only covers 50%. So I would tell people, okay, do an FSA plan, get half of your work done in, let's say, October, like towards the end of the year, then get the other half of your work done at the beginning of the following year, and use an FSA. So you're deferring all of this money and basically using it to get that other 50% of your work covered, and you're using pre-tax dollars. And so if you can, afford to make it work, it's a fantastic way to cover those dollars and not pay any taxes on it. So you can really get creative and use those pre-tax dollars. Childcare works the same way. So childcare dollars, there is a maximum amount of money that you can use for childcare dollars. And it's a fantastic way to use for childcare dollars. It can be used for daycare expenses, after school expenses. It can even be used for adult daycare. If you had a disabled dependent, for example, it could be used for those expenses as well. All right, next one. The biggest thing also, just to add in, is on flexible spending. The biggest rule, IRS rule, is they are use it or lose it, which means that if you do not have the receipts or the expenses to substantiate the money that you have deferred, you do not get that money back. Okay. So there's usually a grace period into the beginning of the following year, like 90 days is really pushing it. Sometimes it's 30 days, might be 4 months. It depends on the plan design. But that's to prevent people from fraudulently using the plan. Okay. But they're use it or lose it. And so I would, have cases sometimes of people coming to me and saying, Melissa, what do I do? I don't have the money to, demonstrate that I use these expenses. And I'm like, I don't, know what to tell you. And they would be talking about things that were fraudulent and illegal. And I'm like, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear anything about that. And I would remind them that in the state of Florida, fraud is a third-degree felony. So I'm like, you don't want to go down that road because that's not, unfortunately, it's use it or lose it. So at open enrollment, you really want to make sure that your employees fully understand that it is use it or lose it. So be on the side of caution, about those plans. And I tell people, use a little amount, do a smaller amount the first year, $200, $300, and the other really good thing about FSA is for medical is that you are advanced the whole amount at the beginning of the year in most plans. So if you do need that, if you know you're having a child, a baby, for example, and the obstetrician wants all of their money ahead of time, boom, you can give them all of the money that they need, or the hospital wants the deposit or, whatever for the, deductible. It makes it, beneficial to have that. All right. So moving on to the next one, which is the HRA, the Health Reimbursement Account. All right. So this is another IRS tax code. The thing to remember about HRAs is that these are only used for employers. Okay, employers. These are not used for employees. Sometimes people get these confused. HSAs, we're going to talk about those in a minute. Those are used with employees, can contribute to an HSA. HRAs are used by employers to fund for times where an employer might want to subsidize the cost of a health plan that they created. HSAs, I even do it. HRAs became very popular after employers started to have to increase the costs of healthcare funds when, or I should say, as healthcare costs became more and more and more expensive for employers to be able to help fund. And so HRAs are ways that employers could create these funds to help employees with fees and expenses, including deductibles that they have that are excluded from employees' gross income for qualified medical expenses. There's no limit that an employer can contribute, but they have to be only for employers. Okay. Then the next one that is a major one to know about is the HSA, and that's at the top of page 161. So HRAs were created in 2003 by Congress. HSAs, I think I said HRA, I'm sorry if I did. HSAs were created. You can have an HSA whether you work for an employer or not. You can have an HSA. I can have an HSA as an individual. I can go create one through anywhere. I can put in to Google, open an HSA, and I'll get all kinds of sponsored results of companies that want my money, to charge me a fee to open an HSA, or my bank. Well, I bank with a credit union, they don't have them, but a major bank would have them to be able to put money aside to save for healthcare expenses. If I have a high deductible health plan at my employer, then I am required with those plans to have an HSA to go along with my HDHP. Okay, so that's an important thing to know. If I have, let me repeat that again. If I have a high deductible HDHP, high deductible health plan, the employer is required to have an HSA that goes along with it. Okay. Employers can also have HSAs that they can have along with their plans. But if they have HDHPs, they're required under law to have HSAs. But employers started offering those when, again, just like HRAs, when they started having higher premiums for plans, and they started helping employees with the premium costs, they started having HSAs. So there's a lot of advantages to having HSAs. Then the last one is the private health exchange. So part of the Affordable Care Act, which we're going to look at under the employee benefit laws section, or not employee benefit laws, but just benefit laws section, is that the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, created health exchanges. And these were created as a way for people to go out and get benefits because they were required to have benefits under the ACA. If you didn't have benefits through your employer, part of the original creation of the ACA required every person that was 18 and older to have a health plan or face tax issues with their taxes, right? And so exchanges were created in every state and through healthcare.gov for people to be able to get insurance. And so that's what the exchanges are all about. And so that is basically the end of the section. Anybody have any questions on any of those?
I have a question. Going back to the HSA, you said that employers have to have that as a requirement for high deductible health plans.
Right.
Is this on the test? And what is a high deductible? What is the amount of a high deductible health plan?
It can be as much as the plan is with the employer. So anybody in here have high deductible health plans, and what are the deductible limits on the plans that you all have? I've seen group plans have deductibles that were 10,000, 15,000 for family coverage. So let's see, somebody messaged me and said $3,200 deductible for an individual. Beth said that theirs is 10,000. Now, Beth, is that for, what is that for? Wow, that's just crazy. $10,000 for an individual. So yeah,
Wow.
it's going to vary based on the company, and it's just going to all be different based on the individual organization. And so Beth, just a side question on that. So in that plan, is that plan free to your employee?
Yes, yes, the premium is 0. And so typically most of our younger employees that don't have any medical issues sign up for it, because then they're not paying any kind of health insurance. And, if they're not having a lot of medical expenses that they expect, then it ends up, making more sense for them.
Right.
And then they could save
Right.
into that HSA, like you spoke about.
Right. And so, and because we'll talk about it in just a second when we get into benefit laws, but in that situation, when an employer is going to go ahead and they're going to offer that type, that's what I kind of figured you would say, because when an employer is going to offer that plan, knowing that under the ACA requires every health plan to offer plans, every plan, regardless of what it is and how much a deductible is, whether it has a deductible or whether it doesn't, to offer plans with preventive healthcare coverage. So if I'm a healthy individual and I don't have any healthcare problems, and I can go to the doctor once a year and I can get a physical, and it's going to be free, and I can get my blood work done, and I can check my cholesterol and check, my blood work, and have, all that done. And if I'm over 50, I can get all my screenings done. And if I'm a woman, I can get my mammogram and my pap smear and blah, 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 blah. The ACA covers all of that for free. And so if I'm under, 50, I still get, all of that done for free. If I don't expect for anything to come up, then yeah, why not get that plan? And then, if something does come up, well, then you take it, kind of as it goes. But a lot of employers will offer that kind of plan, 0 copay. Then the, employees that are expecting not to have any issues and, like Beth said, are fairly healthy, are going to take that plan, has the HSA attached to it. And then if they know that they have maybe a little something and they need some coverage, maybe they have allergy problems, right? So then they get an HSA, they put some money into it, and they've got some coverage for, some allergy medicine or something to go along with it. So does that answer your question? But it's basically going to vary by the company. And the other thing that's always going to go into it too is how sick your employees are as a whole. One of the things that we'll talk about in Unit 5 is risk management. And so if you have a really sick group of employees, because you have a lot of claims and your employees don't take good care of themselves, you have a lot of usage, you have a lot of high dollar claims, what can happen is insurers see that as a risk. And the higher your risk, like we talked about in our session on Tuesday with the definitions of experience rating, the more claims you have, the more volume you have in claims, the more usage you have in claims, then the more your insurance is going to cost. So then they're going to come back with a higher bid for your employees and for you as an organization, and it's going to cost you more money. And you either have to decide to pay that premium yourself as the employer or somehow split it among, spread it out to your employees. And so then the employer has to decide, how are we going to do that and balance? And if you think about going back to what we talked about at the very beginning of Unit 4, the spokes of the wheel, one of them was cost benefit, right? That balance between cost and benefit. And that's something that's one of the strategic objectives of compensation. So that's something that's going to come up actually the very last section that we're going to look at. All right, here is the knowledge check question. It says the concern regarding adverse selection with respect to flexible benefits programs is a concern that A, employees will select unnecessary benefits. B, only high-risk employees will participate in expensive benefits, causing premiums to increase. C, employees will fail to enroll in health insurance plans and prefer to receive cash. Or D, employees will prefer time off rather than health coverage. Okay, so the answer to this question is actually B. High-risk employees will participate in expensive benefits. You want to reference that term, adverse selection, on page 159. It's the bottom paragraph under flexible benefits, right before FSA, adverse selection. Okay, so that's the bottom or the end of the section. Anybody else have any general questions? I think here the idea between the two groups is, from a PHR CP is the generalized idea of each of the areas, and then a senior, it's a little hard to say. It could kind of go a lot of different ways. Situationally, like I was describing, or in the weeds, or it could be more about comparisons between plans, PPO versus HMO. So a lot of different ways it could go. I don't have any really good feedback on, specific things to really be able to share in this area. Although I will say this kind of general overall, I have received feedback that people have said they've done matching, like in the drag and drop of plans. I have seen that at that was a PHR person that said that, where they had like plans on one side and definitions of plans on the other, and they had to match them with each other, like FSA, HRA. So that I definitely saw. I heard somebody say that last year. I just thought about that. So that could be how you could see that. You could see that with HMO, PPO as well. So that's a good way for them to present that. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our next section, which is about managing employee benefits programs. Here, there's some main things to highlight. So let's go ahead and check it out. Philosophies of employee benefits, methods of viewing costs and benefits, and ways to communicate benefit programs and compliance. Right, the philosophy that you see, page 66, is sharing risks of accidents and illness, savings for retirement or bad times, and costs of special services. So you can take a look at the specifics in that section. Next, on page 167, bottom of 167, is employee preference, employee benefit preference surveys. So some information there. That's information that you typically would gather when you did surveys from employees on things that they like about the organization. If you were doing any kind of survey, you usually ask questions about benefits. Here, page 168, on to a little bit of the top of 169, cost benefit analysis. So when we're doing work on any type of analysis and benefits, there's different measurement methods that we can use. And this is just showing you those different measurement ways that we can do this analysis. The annual cost method, cost per employee per year, percent of payroll, and cents per hour. None of these metric methods are difficult, I think, in how to compute them. And the book gives good explanation. When you look at, I will give you a little clue here. When you look at the cents per hour, particular one, take a look at the explanation on page 168. This is the bottom of page 168. The second sentence says, this figure is frequently used in expressing the cost of benefits, especially in union companies. Okay, so it's just a particular thing that is listed there. So it's something that also the next sentence says it is also cited frequently in contract negotiations between unions and employers. So although it's not in Unit 5, it is something that is mentioned here, particularly related to labor relations. So it's a question that we have seen related to compensation, but related to unions. Next thing we see is benefit plan audits, page 169. This is something in particular that I would, it's kind of off the path of the test, I suppose, but something that if you're in benefits or you're as a generalist, something that I definitely recommend as you go into a new position that you do as part of your due diligence in your new role is take a look at how this is happening at your company. Take a look at the 3-point or 4-point, depending on how it's happening, between how your benefits are being billed, how your enrollment is being processed, and how deductions are coming out of paychecks. In other words, is all 3 of those things matching? Just as an example, when I came to an organization that I worked with and did this audit, I found literally, you all, $6,000 in errors. So, for example, people that were no longer with the organization, where COBRA notices may not have even ever been sent, the company was being billed for these people that were still listed with the carrier on benefits, still enrolled in benefits, but no longer with the company. And the company was paying the bill every single month and had been paying the bill for months and months and months. And when further investigation was done, the benefits were being used by the individuals. So guess what? They were committing fraud because they knew they didn't have those benefits and they knew that they weren't paying COBRA and they were still using them. But guess what? It's not the employee's fault when it comes right down to it. It's our fault as the organization. So, of course, we stopped it, but thousands of dollars just because somebody didn't in the HR department, didn't process a termination. So it can make you, I didn't intend to be the heroine of the story, but it saved the organization thousands of dollars. Coordination of benefits, you can take a look at that. Utilization review, take a look at that. Self-funding, I'm going to give that an asterisk for senior test takers, okay? Self-funding is the concept where an employer has 2 different ways to fund their benefit programs. Most employers choose to be what's called third-party funded. Third-party funded means that the company pays the insurance company, i.e. Aetna, to manage their health insurance plans. So my company pays Aetna to manage its medical plan. We pay them a fee and they go manage the plan. When you're self-funded, This means that the company chooses to pay that bill themselves. They manage the fund and they pay a fee to Aetna to allow their employees to access the network of doctors that Aetna provides. But the company pays the bills. Okay. The benefit that this allows is for the company then to have 100% access to everything that is happening, and HIPAA applies, of course, but has access to everything that is going on with what's happening with their employees in aggregate, not at a literal level. Okay. But this helps the employer know where everything is that is going on and manage better their healthcare dollars. And so this can allow an employer to truly design a plan of where to really put their money. So maybe tons of their employees are using the emergency room all the time. Well, that may mean that the employer needs to put more money into wellness and preventative care because their employees aren't doing anything about wellness, right? So anyway, not to get too deep into it. So being self-funded means that the employer is paying literally dollar for dollar every dollar that flows through the plan. The pro is just that. The con is that if you have a multi-million-dollar claim come through, like a baby in the NICU or a cancer claim or something, horrific that comes through, the company's on the hook for it. If you're third party funded, Aetna's going to pay for that. So there's pros and cons to doing that. What the company will then do is they will have insurance for that. If they choose to be self-funded, they will pay for separate insurance that will cover those massive claims. So they have to have insurance to be able to do that. But the benefit is that it will give them complete control over all of the data that they would normally not have when they are third party funded. So I've worked for companies that have done that, become self-funded. Anybody here self-funded that you
Well,
know?
only for our workman's comp.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen it. Another person saying we are. Yeah. Another person saying we just switched to it. Yeah. And Kayla, yeah, it's a huge undertaking, I will tell you, but it makes a massive difference. We did it with the car company that I worked for 10 years. And by the third year, we were terribly unhealthy car sales, right? So think that you got to think of our sales staff sitting around, smoking, drinking, Mountain Dew, sugared soda, fast food, grilling. It was terrible. They were just really, really unhealthy people. And by the third year, with all of the information that we gathered, all the preventative wellness incentives, everything that we put in place, it was hard getting the mindsets of employees to change. We were able to do so many changes and save so much money that all of the money that was saved in the budget under self-funded, the CEO turned around and gave back to all of the employees as a bonus, collectively. It was like millions of dollars that were saved. And he gave it back to everybody. It was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen a CEO do. He could have kept it and, kept it as profit, but he didn't. He turned it around as a thank you for meeting our goals and gave it back to the employees. It was incredible. So it really can make a huge difference. And of course, our insurance, it went down and down and down. So this is before the ACA happened. All right. So that is self-funded, pros and cons. Okay, so let's do a knowledge check question. The cost of benefits figure that is used most frequently in union negotiations is A, total annual cost, B, percent of payroll, C, cost per employee per year, D, cents per hour. Gave you a little bit of help with this one. And if you have the slides printed out, you might notice that I changed this slide. So if you are somebody that already has the slides and you have them printed, I changed this. The original slide, I think, said just contract negotiations, didn't it? Sometimes I know people print the slides or have the slides. I changed it because I wanted it to speak specifically to what I had said. All right, excellent. Yes, it's cents per hour. Cents per hour. Okay, next up, we have legal compliance and ERISA. Here's the thing. ERISA is a law. I actually did a Coach's Corner on this a few weeks ago. That is pretty interesting, that you can really get into it if you want to go and check it out. It was about ERISA and the comparison between ERISA and the ACA. So ERISA does control certain things about pensions and employee benefit welfare plans. And so it controls everything that is listed here. It's discussed in the book. I really don't think we're going to see it again in benefit law, but I don't think for the purposes of here, you really have to worry about anything major. Next up, we have communicating benefit programs, the summary plan description, which is also in your book as a term, is basically the document that is required under ERISA, actually, that says, what is this benefit and what is it about? So every benefit that you offer in your organization, from your medical, your dental, your vision, everything that we just saw on that previous slide, if you have a tuition reimbursement plan, if you have whatever you have, is required to have an SPD. So you should be housing those somewhere accessible to all employees. So if you have an intranet, if you have an employee portal, whatever self-service, whatever you have, these have to be accessible to your employees, and every single benefit. Even if you have prepaid legal, if you have pet insurance, if you have whatever you have, that has to have an SPD. It's an ERISA legal requirement that goes along with it. So those are called summary plan descriptions. Next up is the total reward statement. So TRSs are wonderful documents that can be used in any number of ways. They are little gems that you might find if you have a system like Workday, or if you're using any number of the ones that we've talked about that are total based systems. UltiPro, I still call it UltiPro. I know it's not called that formally anymore, but PeopleSoft, it's probably in there somewhere and you don't even know it. But TRSs can be used as a way, they're used to communicate in any way that you want to, basically with any of the information that you see here, the commitment that you're making to your employee. They can be used in open enrollment. They can be used at the time that you do performance evaluations or after you do a performance evaluation and you're presenting it to your employee with their raise. You can do it at the time that you're completing a merger. You can do it for so many different reasons. Just as a quick example, I did these as an engagement exercise when a new distribution center was getting built down the road. And I knew that I had a workforce that was hugely non-exempt and would leave, not because they didn't love our company, but they were hourly employees that would jump the fence for 25 to 50 cents an hour. And that's just their mindset, lower wage earners. And so I created these for them. And you know what? I had one person, two people, I think, leave out of a workforce of 100 of these people, and then both of them wanted to come back. And once they saw, there were probably 5 that interviewed, and once they saw, like, wow, this is really what I'm making compared to what they're offering, they didn't leave. So they can be used for a lot of different reasons. You can just use them at job fairs to do, like, here's an example of what our employees make. So a lot of different reasons that they can be used. And you may not even have to make it. It might even be in your system if you just take a look for it. Okay. All right, let's finish this section up. We've got a knowledge check question. Says an important philosophy supporting the development of benefit plans is A, avoiding an unfriendly takeover, B, requiring employees to pay for the services they use, C, raising satisfaction and productivity, or D, sharing the risks of accidents and costs of special services. All right, this one is D. Yes. Accidents and costs of special services, which was right at the beginning of the section, page 166. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes or so to go. I just want to get the very first topic out of the first section done of benefit laws and regulations. So the whole section is about eligibility for leave, benefits continuation, and portability. So we're going to talk about the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. So this defines discrimination because of sex. It includes pregnancy, childbirth, and related medical conditions. So let's reach back for a minute and think about, in our session, thinking about Unit 2, actually. Give ourselves a little flashback here. What are some of the other laws that we have talked about that might be applicable in the PDA that we might deal with? All right, so somebody just messaged me. ADA, absolutely. We might be dealing with the ADA when it comes to pregnancy discrimination. Of course, we've got Title VII, sex. So that one is something else somebody just said to me. So Title VII, because of gender or sex. What is something else that might come up? All right, I got another message. FMLA, of course, because we don't know what else might be going on. And that's going to be our starting point, actually, for our session on Tuesday, is going to be about FMLA. Because what happens under pregnancy discrimination is really a number of different things. So, number one, what could be related to pregnancy? What could happen? Somebody could be denied a job.
You could not. Because I mean, you're not supposed to say this, but nobody wants to hire a pregnant person knowing they're going to go out on leave, right? So if you know that, you might not want to hire them. So there should be protections in place.
Right. And so that's number one about the PDA, is because of pregnancy. And some people go into an interview knowing that they're pregnant, knowing that they're, early pregnancy, not showing, because they don't want to say, for exactly what Donnell just said, that they're not going to get the job if they say that they're pregnant, and they're not going to have a year, they're not going to be covered under FMLA. So then when we think about the pregnancy, the childbirth, or related medical conditions, then we get into issues related to, whoops, should have done that one, related to the ADA and related to FMLA.
Melissa, would insurance factors weigh into this, like benefits and whatnot?
Yes and no. So when we talk about something like FMLA, and we'll cover this on Tuesday, everybody has to remember that FMLA is about protection of your job, right? It's about the job. Anything related to, and this is at a federal level, okay? So if you work in a state or you provide HR services for a state that has a law that provides coverage that involves money, that's different. That involves benefits involving money. But FMLA in and of itself is about protection of your job and things that go with it related to benefits such as your tenure, such as protection of your insurance, those types of things. But it does not provide you with coverage of your wages, right? It doesn't provide you with money, FMLA in and of itself. Employees get very confused about that. So if you have, for example, an STD plan, a short-term disability plan, that's a separate discussion, separate paperwork under your leave. So if somebody is pregnant and they have complications, then they may need to go out on early leave, early FMLA because of those complications. And we'll get into the discussion about FMLA on Tuesday, how there are actually different types and different categories of FMLA that everybody needs to be related, or everybody needs to be aware of, bonding leave versus medical leave. So to answer your question, it could be for different benefit reasons that may or may not involve money. But FMLA in and of itself does not involve money. Yeah. Unless you're in a state that has some sort of like, California has, what is it called? The California Disability, I can't remember the name of it, but California Disability Act. I think New York has another one that I can't remember the name of that one either, but that has some sort of state disability act that people pay into. CALA, California Family Rights Act, that it covers your pay. But do you pay into that because you pay state taxes?
No,
Like,
that's part of our short-term disability. The California Rights Act runs concurrently with FMLA, but it
Okay.
covers baby bonding. So they also run separately depending on pregnancy and pregnancy disability leave. It gets very confusing over here in California.
I know. I always feel sorry. I always feel sorry for you guys. I was at Drive Time, the company I was at for 10 years. I had been there for about a year when my boss came to me. She was in Arizona and she asked me if I would move to California. I said, hey, no.
But part of our taxes that we pay into that. So when we go through benefits and open enrollment, even though we offer like long-term disability and short-term disability plans for California, we often let them know that they already pay for it in their taxes. So they don't really need to pay for it twice if they don't want to.
So under the California, so the one you're talking about, that does give you in money when you're out for bonding or medical.
It's through the state. They have to apply for it. So it's not through the
Right.
company. Obviously, the leaves we give as the employer are unpaid, but we do have the disability benefits in California.
Right.
So it could be for paid family leave or it could be for disability leave.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So that's a good stopping point because the PDA, is mainly focused on pregnancy, childbirth, or related conditions. So like if an employee, let's see, who was pregnant had a complication like preeclampsia related to their blood pressure, or they developed gestational diabetes, and had to go on a leave, a disability related to those things, then you could have overlapping disabilities related to that. So when we come back to class on Tuesday, we will finish the rest of the section. So we'll cover FMLA. That's our starting point. We'll finish the rest of the section. And then there's a tiny little section at the end that wraps up Unit 4. And then we will also jump in to Unit 5. So that's where we will be. And then on Thursday's class, for those of you who run ahead, we will be getting into the unions. So I would say you want to go through, I would say, let's see, 5-1, 5-2, 5-3. I'd say 5-5 would be good. I'll have a better idea on Monday or on Tuesday rather, but through 5-5 would be good as far as reading would be really good. All right, I'll stay on for questions, but otherwise I'll see everybody on Tuesday. Have a safe weekend out there, and see you Sunday if you're going to join Sunday. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's it. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you. Oh, and Beth, I hope you feel better.
Okay. Melissa, what time did you say was your thing on Sunday?
It's at 8 o'clock Eastern time.
8 p.m. Eastern. All right. Sounds good. All right. Have a good night. Feel better.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, Melissa, I have a question, more of your advice. So I haven't scheduled my test yet. I bought the voucher, but I thinking I'm having a little bit of anxiety since this is my second attempt at it. What would you suggest would be like a good time frame after we're done with the class?
I always tell people that it depends on where you are at with your preparation in HRCP. So, if you have been able to stay current in your testing and you're good as far as working after the unit ends, and you've been able to stick with doing all the after unit activities, and you've been timely, that's the key. So if you have been able to do that, and I tell people it's no judgment if you have or you haven't. This is just what I'm answering the question. If you have been able to do that, then I think getting in and doing, let's say you have, getting in and doing the final exams, which those are the 3 toughest, keeping in mind that you've got the 24-hour window where you can't do another attempt, right? So keeping that in mind. I tell people 3 weeks after the class ends is a good fair amount of time. I have other colleagues that tell people 2 weeks, but assuming, everything that I just said, but I tell people 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. I recommend that people from what we use for mini review, that if you have the opportunity to go out, and if you didn't already purchase either the book that I recommend, or to go out and spend the $22 and buy the 30-day on Pocket Prep, that gives you the 1,000 questions on Pocket Prep. So then you get everything done in HRCP, and then that's wrapped up. And then you literally just drill. And that's your focus. Once you get HRCP wrapped up, you just spend your time drilling on questions, practicing your test taking strategies, and you can work on once you do that and you get that premium access on Pocket Prep, then you can set up your questions any way you want, work on a unit, and then just go back if you are having trouble with something. So yeah, I think 21 to 30 days is fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I took it 3 weeks after the last course. So I think that's why, I think I'm just having anxiety about picking a date. But that was kind of my thought process, was to finish up the test in the HRCP. And then I bought the Sandra Reed
book. Okay.
So I have that. I just haven't dove into the questions of that yet. My focus was on the test.
Well, yeah. Well, then, okay. So then you'll have the same resource that Pocket Prep would give you. So what I would do is you'll have Sandra Reed and you'll have the total tester. So you'll have the same questions. And then you can also go to Pocket Prep and you can create, I tell everybody, go to Pocket Prep and create your account there. and then create what exam are you taking?
I want to take the SPHR.
Okay. So, you can still create your account for SPHR, and then you can create the SPHR free account, then you can add the PHR and you can add the CP, and that will give you the free question of the day for each of those accounts. That gives you all, the free practices, and you'll have Sandra Reed's book as well, which is going to give you everything for PHR and SPHR. So you want to do both levels because that gives you all the questions, and you'll still have all that practice in there. And when you took the exam before, was it the SPHR as well?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So, the one thing that I asked the people I think it's up to 6 now that have passed in the past 3 weeks that have come, from my last class. I always ask them, did you use the resources that, from Mini Review? And each of them, except for one, either had the book, had Sandra Reed, or did Pocket Prep. So each of them did that. One of them didn't, but used HRCP and their book, and so they've all passed. So
The first time around, I didn't use any additional resources, and I found that the wording, I missed it by 10 points. I missed the cutoff by 10 points. I know, I was so bummed. But anyways, so I'm hoping, I found that the wording was pretty different than how it was worded in the HRCP test. And I think I just got caught up on that. So I'm hoping that those additional resources will help bridge the gap.
I think you'll find that they will. I consistently have people come back to me and say that the wording in because Sandra Reed and Pocket Prep are essentially the same thing, because that's Pocket Prep's source is Sandra Reed. So consistently come back and say that the wording is much closer to those sources than HRCP. So
okay,
I think you'll find that that's the case.
If not, I bought my voucher when they were doing a special where they were giving you a second chance for free. So I have that as well.
Well, plus, we are doing, we don't really kind of outwardly talk about it, but as long as you meet the terms and conditions of our money back guarantee with attendance and your exam, then we are offering second chance insurance as part of your tuition as well. So you are definitely covered, Nicole.
I did go through, because the first course I did was through HR.com as well. It was the 8-week course, and
that's right. I think we talked about that.
It was just a little too accelerated.
Yeah.
And when I filled out the money back guarantee, I was like, is there any way I can take the 16-week course? And so Jen gave me options. So, which I appreciated. Because I'm I want to try again.
I hope that you found it more beneficial this time.
I did. Yeah. I felt like it was at a much slower pace. And I feel like there's more discussions where the 8-week course, there was just so much content in each class that
I don't know how I don't. Jen has asked me, do I want to teach and accelerate? And I'm like, I can't. I can barely, we're behind. We're not that behind, but I'm like, I can barely keep up with what we have now. I can't even imagine like, no, like, there's no way I couldn't do it. It's just not I'd be like reading the slides. I feel like I'd be just like, okay, pregnancy discrimination defines discrimination because it's next.
And that's kind of like, I mean, no against that instructor, because I think, she did a great job too. But I felt like that was more how it was. There was way less interaction than what we currently have.
I don't know how there couldn't be. Yeah, I just don't know how it could be that there wouldn't. Yeah.
But,
I wish we could have a lot more than we do. Like, I wish we could talk a lot more. I wish, like when I had my course, my courses, we talked a lot about our experiences, and it was a lot more learning from each other than we do now. I try to bring that in as much as I can, but we would be here for 3 hours if we could do it the way that I would love to see it done. But it doesn't work that way for everybody.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway, okay.
Okay. Well, thank you. I will get it scheduled. I think I like I said, I was in that scheduling page and like so much came over me. I'm like, you know what? We're just gonna close it and we'll just try again later.
All righty.
So okay. Thank you.
You're
Have a good night.
welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Any other questions? Okay, we'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.